I'm Catherine Boughton. I'm the president of the chapter.
Sure.
And a lot of our chapter board members are here, as well as some names I don't recognize and some names I do recognize. So welcome, everybody. This is our first chapter meeting of the 2025-26 season. We meet monthly, the third Tuesday of the month, and this year we're having 8 meetings, so you'll want to check which months we are not meeting. They're January, February, July, and August. You can also look on our website, just as a reminder, under programs, we have most of our upcoming topics already on the website. So take a look, and you can also see recordings of most of our past meetings there. Occasionally a meeting is not recorded, but they're mostly there. Before I start, I want to encourage those of you who are in New York City to join us this weekend at the annual Walk for Hearing. This is organized by our national office, and there are Walk for Hearings all over the country, and this is ours in New York City. It's a really festive event with participants of all ages and from all over the metropolitan area, kids, grown-ups, older people. It's really fun to see everybody and to see what a big community we are. We also have hearing professionals who have booths, so you can ask a question if you want to about hearing aids or cochlear implants. The walk starts in Riverside Park, which most of you probably know where that is, at 83rd Street. The start time is kind of vague. Basically, whenever you're finished your second cup of coffee, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. The actual walk starts, I think, at 10:30, but it's a very informal gathering. So, of course, we would like you to support our chapter team, Walk New York, but it's not mandatory, nor is registration, which you'll pass on your way in. So I'd just like to encourage people to just walk right in, stop by our chapter booth just slightly inside the park. If you're new to hearing loss or to HLAA, please introduce yourself. And we, from the chapter, will be, as many as we can find, we'll be wearing name tags. I'll be wearing a name tag, and Sophie will be. So I hope to see you all there. It's an in-person event, and I know a lot of people have been hoping that we'd be able to do that for a chapter meeting. We have not yet managed to set that up. It requires a hybrid situation, and we just haven't been able to find a place and a time that works for that. So if you want to see some of your fellow HLAA NYC chapter members, please do come. Everyone's familiar, this is just a little business, with Zoom by now, but just in case there's anybody who isn't, here's a couple of brief instructions. Captions can be accessed. Everything is at the bottom of your screen. So captions are, there's an icon towards the right. Just click on that for captions. If you want stream text captions, the link is in the chat. We ask that you mute yourself, and but I always like it if people turn their videos on, because I think it really creates a more collegial atmosphere. When it's time for questions, please click on React, which is that heart in the middle of the bottom of the screen, and then raise hand. You can also ask questions in the chat. And don't forget to unmute yourself when you speak. If you do forget, we'll probably all be waving at you like this. So if you see that, it means you're probably still muted. And now onto our program. Our moderator is Dr. Karen MacLennon. She has been an audiologist with a focus on hearing assistance technology and hearing loops for more than 17 years. She earned a doctoral degree in audiology from Arizona School of Health Sciences. Prior to earning her doctoral degree, she earned a Bachelor of Arts degree as a teacher of the speech and hearing handicapped with honors, and an associate degree in applied sciences in American Sign Language Studies. Throughout her professional career, Karen has provided audiological and education audiology services to hospitals, private practices, and nonprofit educational and rehabilitation agencies. She also teaches graduate and undergraduate courses in audiology and oral rehabilitation. And she has spoken to our chapter before, but not for a while. So welcome back, Karen.
Thank you,
I
Catherine.
also want to introduce Dr. Sophie Racine, who is a panelist and a chapter board member. Sophie earned her clinical doctorate of audiology from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York in June of 2020. She obtained her Bachelor of Arts degree in Gender Studies from Hamilton College in 2013, and she is currently a clinical audiologist at ENT and Allergy Associates in Brooklyn. Dr. Racine has worked as a clinical audiologist at Montefiore Medical Center and Seattle Children's Hospital. She has experience in comprehensive diagnostic testing, electrophysiological assessments, a lot of big words here, primarily auditory brainstem response evaluations and try that again, otoacoustic emissions evaluations and vestibular assessments for pediatric and geriatric hearing loss. Um, Sophie, I'm not going to name the rest of all your specialties. I am just going to turn this over to Sophie, who has organized this meeting and has found the panelists for us. She is going to start by introducing our panelists. So thank you very much, Sophie. Thank you, Karen. We really look forward to this meeting.
Thank you, Catherine, for that introduction. I know there are a lot of big words there that are more audiology jargons that may not have been necessary, but thank you, and thank you everyone for joining us. We have a wonderful panel that will be sharing their experiences with hearing loss and caring for someone with hearing loss. The purpose of this chapter meeting is to shine light on the importance of community when it comes to navigating hearing loss. So sometimes when people receive the diagnosis of hearing loss, it can feel overwhelming, it can feel isolating. Some might feel there's a burden to those around them. Some might feel a little sense of grief or even shame. However, the end goal for helping someone who has lost their hearing is to help them communicate with those around them. And so we want to improve social interactions and prevent social withdrawal. And so therefore we may need to lean on those around us when we're feeling our most vulnerable. And so I think, the little blurb that we had for this meeting, the quote that Dr. Mark Ross has said that when someone in the family has hearing loss, the entire family has a hearing problem. And I can definitely resonate with that. So I want to bring attention to those that we lean on and give them a platform to share their experiences. So without further ado, I want to introduce our panelists that we have. We have Judith Frankfurt. She is a seasoned art administrator with extensive involvement in performing and visual arts organizations, serving either as a consultant or internal executive. She has worked as general managers in several orchestras and symphonies across the country, and she has also served the administration for the Book and Museum. So while she's not enriching our society with music and culture, she offers support to her partner that has been navigating their journey with hearing aids. We have Lindy Turner. Lindy is a writer for television and theater. She spends a lot of her spare time trying to take good pictures with an old film camera, mostly in North American hiking trails. Her mother just experienced sudden hearing loss this past March, and she has stepped into a more caregiving role as the only child. We have Patricia and Jack Fish, a married couple that had both have hearing loss and hearing aids. They're originally from Wisconsin, where Jack taught high school math and Patricia wrote children's stories. They raised their family on a small organic farm, and they had a farmer neighbor who was a dairy farmer, and they grew their own food. They recently moved, or not so recently, but they moved to Brooklyn in 2013 to help care for their grandchildren since their children had moved to New York City. Patricia is still writing children's stories, and Jack is the philosopher poet. And last but not least, we have Kathleen Stephenson. She's a senior economist at Haver Analytics and a senior economic advisor to the Boston Consultant Group. She serves on the board for the Global Interdependence Center and the Economics for Peace and Security. She's also my mother. She's a role model. She's a confidant. She's an inspiration. She's a mother of two daughters and a recent grandmother to my new favorite person in the whole world, my nephew. While she's busy, not busy mothering or grandmothering, she spends her time sailing and sometimes takes care of my dog and our family. So I would love to hand this over to Karen. She's going to be helping us with moderating our panelists.
Thank you, Sophie, and thank you, Catherine, for the introduction as well. So I'm really excited to be here. I think this topic, hearing aids, a family affair, is incredibly helpful because, as Sophie had mentioned, it really does take a village to manage a lot of things in life, and hearing loss is no different. So Sophie has worked on some questions, and I'll be just asking some of our panelists how they feel about the questions. So I look forward to hearing from you, and as I'm sure the rest of the group does. So let's get started. We have about 10 to 12 questions, and I guess the first question that I find may be a good leaping off point is if Patricia and John, you can describe what some of the learning curves were for hearing aid use.
Yeah, of the two of us, I was the first person who wanted to have hearing aids and recognized that I had some kind of diminished hearing. Can you hear me? Um, and Patty remembers that it was in Wisconsin when all of our family uh, during COVID were living in our farmhouse for 1 year. That I noticed that I wasn't able to participate with the rest of the family as well as I wanted to. And so then we decided to get a hearing aid and or get my ears tested and get hearing aid. So I was the first one of the two of us. And the other thing is I kind of always thought I would wanted to get a hearing aid earlier rather than later because hearing is very important to me and I wanted to be able to hear as long as I could in my life. So that was another reason why I pushed to get a hearing aid. So we got one in. I got two, and it was a challenge. But I think being with the family there in Wisconsin, um, my grandsons and my daughter and her wife uh, and our other daughter were all there in the house together. We were really in a loud environment, and I would say the hardest thing has always been for me, continues to be, is when the noise in the room is uh, loud,
Background noise.
the background noise. And in New York, we have a lot of situations like that. We have a highway right out here. I take the kids to the playground every day, and that's a huge problem. So I guess that's I don't know whether I've solved that problem or like, but I recognize it when it happens, I guess, and try to be patient in those situations when my hearing aids are trying to shield me from all this noise, um, and and it feels I feel a lot of pressure, you know, in my ears during that time.
Sure. And Patricia, how about you? What
Um,
were some of the learning curves for you?
well, I think that the technology involved in the hearing aid, we got, you have an app and you have all the things that go with it. I think that was, I'm more technologically, um, I'm more into technology than Jack is. So that I went to when he went to get his hearing aid, I went and they kind of explained to me how to work the app. And then so I was able to help him right now, I think we've got it all set. So that once we got it set, it was pretty automatic. But but I think at the beginning, it was harder to deal with the fact that there was an app and how to put them in and all of it and how to clean them. So all of that was I think a challenge at the beginning. And for me, the challenge was the fit, because I didn't have the kind where my hearing isn't as bad. And
Patty, we can go.
sorry, my hearing isn't as bad, so I didn't have the one that's fit particularly for your ears, and mine kept falling out. So I had to go back and get a bigger one, and that was uncomfortable. But again, once it got fixed, once it got straightened out, I think they pretty much, I think so there wasn't a big problem to get used to the hearing aid for us. I think.
Sure. That's good news. And for the significant others, what are some of the rewards that you found providing support to your family members with hearing loss? So, Lindsay, how about we start with you?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sure. What are some of the rewards that you found in supporting your mother who has hearing loss?
Oh, well, I mean, it was an interesting sort of process for us because it came almost out of nowhere. My mother got a very terrible sinus infection and she lost her hearing very suddenly. And the challenge of figuring out how to communicate with her while we tried to figure out how to navigate the sinus infection and how to sort of find an audiologist and, find the hearing aids and get used to them. The challenge of communicating brought this really unexpected reward because my family and I are all comedy writers, and we tend to look for humor wherever there's stress. And we invented a family shorthand for so that my mother could express what she needed or how she felt. We developed this sort of language amongst ourselves where she could use a particular word and we knew it meant that she couldn't hear us or that she was frustrated or that she needed water. Like, we just developed this shorthand, and she's gotten the hearing aids and the shorthand has stayed in a way. And it's really interesting because we had the shorthand, and my mother used to use the phrase quack whenever she was frustrated because she felt like a duck that just wanted to quack, over and over and over again. And quack now has taken on this dimension of, like, we've explored her frustration and, she sort of talks about it more freely. So it put her in touch with her emotions. And then the shorthand made her laugh about it. And then once she had the hearing aids and adjusted to them, the conversations that we had about how she was feeling about the situation and about the process and about, the sort of feelings it was bringing up for her, the shorthand has lived, but it's also deepened, which was really lovely. And it also, because she's been freer about expressing it, it lets me talk about it too. So I feel like there was sort of this undercurrent that's probably present in a lot of families where, for me, I'm an only child. Both of my parents are older. And so there's just this awareness on their part and mine that time is passing, which brings up a lot of feelings. And then there was no way to talk about it. So in a weird way, this terrible, terrible sinus infection that lasted for more than a month was like one of the best things that ever happened. And then the journey into her hearing aids and sort of figuring out how to navigate that was a good thing because it literally gave us language to be able to talk about our evolution as a family, which was wild. It was just really unexpected, but really lovely.
Well, thank you for sharing. Sophie, are there any challenges or learning curves that you wanted to describe from your experience?
It's interesting. I'm going to hand it over to my mom. I think I got my hearing aid when I was,
Oh.
how old was I? 3? Yeah. You can unmute yourself and chime in, but I think I was about 3 when I got my hearing aids. So, uh, you know, I can't quite remember if I had difficulty with them. But I don't remember. Uh, I know now as an adult what I do have difficulty with, which is getting new hearing aids.
Oh, yes.
And I'm about to get a new set on Thursday, and I'm feeling there's a lot of anxiety that's coming with it. And my family has made fun of me about it in some ways of like, not made fun of me, but sort of joke around with me and sort of, okay, avoid Sophie for 2 weeks with her new hearing aids.
Yeah,
In
so
a good mood.
it is interesting. I mean, first of all, hello everyone. This is such a wonderful opportunity to be part of this Zoom meeting. So Sophie fooled us so well for the first couple of years because uh, my husband had to just go to another Zoom meeting, who some of you might have seen very briefly, sharing my screen. He's a pediatrician and got fooled as well. So it was really interesting because Sophie managed to compensate so well. And then we started to worry because she wasn't speaking. And she had been tested, and the audiologist didn't think that there was anything wrong, and she was a very known person, and then tested again, and then finally there she was diagnosed with the bilateral hearing loss. And then it was a question to really move quickly to have hearing aids. And she just accepted those hearing aids without any problem. It was really unbelievable because we were quite worried that she might want to pull them out and this and that, but none of it. She was such a trooper. And she continued to be a trooper in the sense that then there was this race to acquire language and to really, you know, compensate for the lost time in terms of acquiring the language. And she was just a trooper. What can I say? And, you know, I'm the mother, sure, but I am so proud of her.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
of course. Yeah, absolutely. She's an outstanding young woman, sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And I guess, Judith, can we ask you, what were some of the learning curves for you as somebody who helps a family member with hearing loss?
I feel like we're really new still to this community. And so we're still on that learning curve. And the part of it was just physically getting the hearing aids to work. Although he's had them now for 2+ years, I think we can say at this point they're starting to work, although he still needs to play with them and deal with that. But for him, the biggest adjustment, and this was one that I mean, you can call it my learning curve, but in reality, it's the part where I felt I really couldn't help, because his biggest adjustment was the audio quality. He felt everything he was hearing sounded amplified. It wasn't a natural sound. He couldn't get it to feel like a natural sound, whether it was speaking or just ambient sound or music. Everything was amplified. And that was very disconcerting. And, we were aware, I mean, we had friends, I've had friends who were considerably younger who started to have hearing loss and simply didn't do anything about it. They would just, cup a hand behind the ear. And then I never understood why they didn't go get something that would help. But of course, I was coming to it from the point of view of somebody who has eyesight loss. I mean, I've been nearsighted since I was a child, and you go to the eye doctor and he gives you these wonderful things called glasses, and then you can see, or contact lenses, whatever. But I am learning that hearing aids are different. And it's a different quality of sound, and that was the hardest thing for my husband to adjust to, and he's not adjusted yet. I wish, and I think I'm jumping to a different question, but I wish there were some way, and I could help better if there were some way that I could experience that. If there were some kind of mock-up hearing aid that I could put in and hear what someone with hearing aids hears. And then I would know what he was talking about.
There are.
Wow, thank you, Judith. That's very insightful. So, Sophie, my internet connection, it's not as robust as I would hope. So you might have to jump in and co-moderate at some point.
Sure thing. So it's interesting, Judith, going off of that, there are ways that you can try and listen to his hearing aids. There are sort of these listening scopes that, an audiologist can sort of help you hear it, and you can get a sense of what it's like. It's not perfect, but it definitely provides an insight to how it may sound. And it's interesting because people always want to make that comparison of glasses to hearing aids, but it's not quite right.
I learned that.
Glasses are corrective, and it's perfect after that, and everything's crystal clear.
I know, it's wonderful. Why wouldn't you just go get hearing aids the way you just go get glasses?
Right. No, definitely. So just going off of these questions, I think besides sort of, I guess, the clarity of what else I think I'm gonna go to you and then also go to Patricia and Jack, but what are some things that you wish the hearing aid did differently than they do currently?
I'm sorry, you're not talking to me, are you?
I am talking to you first, and then I'm going to go to Patricia and Jack. So from your experience with him and what you noticed, besides the clarity of like other things about the hearing aid itself that you're just kind of like from a design standpoint that doesn't make sense.
They do seem very variable. They don't seem terribly reliable. They don't do the same thing 2 days in a row. And I mean, he has the most trouble with the ambient noise being magnified, and it's just this constant struggle. And I heard Patricia and I'm so sorry, is it Bert? I don't see them on my screen right now. Talking about the same thing, that culling out the person speaking from the ambient noise was very hard, and that's the number one problem, and it doesn't seem to be solved. At least it's not solved for us. And there have been hearing aids for a long time.
Yeah.
But it's obviously a very difficult problem.
Patricia and Jack, do you guys want to weigh in on
Judith
that?
is talking. Judith is talking about her husband, who is older.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we're pretty old.
Not a child.
But yeah, I would like to make a comment about glasses because I'm having problems with my glasses. And my brother had problems with his glasses. So, and for years, my glasses were like, in fact, when I first got glasses, it was a miracle, felt like a miracle. But at any rate, my about the hearing aids and what I would like them to do, I think I would like it somehow to be able to shield the ambient noise, kind of, sorta. In other words, I still think I want to hear it. In fact, one of the things that I really enjoy about being out in nature with my hearing aids is I feel like I can hear so much. You know, I can hear the car's wheels going along, cluck cluck, you know, as they go through the gravel, and there's all these things I had missed hearing for years, I think, that I do hear with my hearing aids. But I think it is, I think your husband may have trouble with that, the fact that he's getting all this information and he doesn't want it. He wants something, you know,
Focused.
yeah, focused and pared down. And of course, when you're listening to someone speaking and when you're listening to something in particular, like a child trying to say what his problem is because he just fell down on the playground, it would be nice. And the other thing that I wonder about too is the technology of shielding you. I understand it as that your hearing aid creates sound, and that matches the environment so that it cancels out some of the sound, some of the wavelengths. I don't know if that's accurate to even what my hearing aids do, but for me, it creates a certain kind of pressure, a feeling of pressure in my ears that's very uncomfortable. So I would like that to be better. Do you have something?
Yeah, I was just thinking about when Jack first got his hearing. So when you talked about fun things or things that were really, really happy things that happened with your hearing aids. When he first got his hearing aids, after having struggled with hearing for a few years, at least, you know, probably maybe more years than we knew. He was like, "Oh my gosh, the newspaper! I can hear the newspaper opening," and he just was like he was just having so much fun listening to the environment, and that was fun. I also remember going home and went after he got them. We went home to our whole family all being in the same house and I said, "Now you guys have to stop talking about Jack because he can hear everything we say now." So they were all okay. Okay, that's good. But I think for me, if my father many years ago had some hearing aids that it was before cell phones, so we didn't have an app or anything, but he had a little thing that he wore on his belt that he could very quickly turn on or off the background noise or where he was getting the noises from. He could do it much faster than it seems like we can with the app, because we open up our app, we have to find our phone, open up the app, then they have to wait till the hearing aids connect to the app, and then we can find the right program to either turn it up or down or change from. I mean, he has a program on his app called Boys, and that's like shuts everything down because the boys are really loud. But it takes a while to get into that app. And if it was, I think that the hearing aids that we have are much better than my dad's that he had many years ago. But I just think that part of the design, I wish that it was faster to get into changing, like turning off the ambient
Like a
noise.
dial or something.
Or yeah, something like that.
The one time Patty's father was in the other room, uh, working on a photograph, his photographic equipment, and Patty and I were talking, and then in another room, and we had no idea he could hear us, but he had dialed us in, and he was just like in the room practically, sitting right next to
Saying,
us.
I can hear
And
you.
when he walked by, he responded to something we said. Oh my God, I want that.
So that was, I mean,
I'm a snoop.
as a design thing, I think that if it was faster to change, I mean, even if you could like have a button on your hearing aid that could do that. And maybe there is
No,
one, and I'm not
it'd be better
very,
to do it like you.
very, I don't know about it, but some other thing that would connect faster and change the program faster.
Yeah, Patricia, this is Karen. I think your father's, I'm going to guess that your father wore a body aid, and that was a basic toggle switch that got you from program to program, kind of like a light switch.
Yeah.
And a lot of hearing aids still have buttons in addition to having the feature of all the functions on an app. So you might be able to get something like that moving forward if you currently don't have buttons on your hearing device.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I just
That's
remember the button to be so much better. Like I used to have one of these bigger hearing aids, and it was just it was like a light switch, and it was just easy. You go from program 1, program 2, back to program 1,
Yeah.
back to
Click,
program 2, and it was a lot easier to get there versus the button. I never used any of them, but it was.
Yeah, ours has little buttons, and we can change turn them down or turn them up pretty
Yeah.
easy. But it's harder to get. I don't think you can get to the programs from the buttons.
Well, the thing about is like our volume button, I can feel it now, but George, Patty's
My dad, that was
father,
my dad.
as he got older, his hands were not good, and those little tiny buttons
Oh
would
no, that's true. He couldn't
not
have
have
done that.
worked for him, and I worry that I'm getting that way, but at any rate, haven't yet, I don't think.
Another question I have is about how prepared you felt to either be a hearing aid user or how prepared you felt by the hearing healthcare provider to support a family member with hearing loss. Lindsay, do you want to take that one on? How well prepared did you feel to support your mom?
In her hearing journey, not at all. Because it was so sudden. My parents worked in a very loud environment for a very long time. And so they both were diagnosed with tinnitus, about 20 years ago. And so they had a ringing in their ears. And, we had there were ways that we compensated for that. I took a lot of, actually, this is going to sound very strange, but I took a lot of vocal training classes when I was in college, because it just helped support my voice so that they could hear me, which was important. Because it's just the three of us. But, because my mother's hearing loss was so sudden, the adjustment was startling and a little scary. I don't mean this the way it sounds. Again, forgive me, this is comedy writer brain, but one of the strangest experiences I think you can have as a child is yelling at your mother with love so that she can hear you. You know what I mean? It's just at the top of my lungs, like going, do you need coffee? Like it was a strange experience. Um, and so, to Sophie's point about it being community based, you go through life and you go through changes with a community. We're very lucky in that we have a lot of very close friends that there were people in our sphere who had navigated, being with a loved one who experienced gradual hearing loss. And so there were people I could call to say, what worked for you? How do I do this? Who do I need to call? Who do I talk to? Like, how do we fix this? Not fix it, but make her life more supported? Like, how do we support her through this? And they were very helpful, and they kind of rallied around. We had this clutch of people who, turned up and kind of helped us out. And it was a saving grace. I mean, I'll always be grateful, but I was I wasn't prepared until we got to Louise Levy. Louise Levy was wonderful, and it was so great for my mom to sit with someone who was direct and practical and friendly and funny and, understood sort of the vanity part of it, of not wanting people to notice and wanting to match her hair color. And Louise was just right there with her going, nope, we got you. And then for me, she was a great support because my mother also has essential tremors in both hands, which makes the finer delicacy of putting hearing aids in and taking them out, it makes it a little more difficult. And so Louise kind of coached me through how to help her get used to putting them in and taking them out, coached my mother through how strong they could be, how resilient they were, that my mom didn't need to worry about accidentally pulling them to pieces, which was great. Yeah, it was an interesting journey because initially it felt very sudden and scary, and then the people around us were very supportive, which was really lovely. You know,
Terrific.
yeah.
That's
I'm sorry, can I backtrack for 1 second to something I'd change about hearing aids if I could? Or my mom would, which is my mother's a hugger. She loves to hug people. It's how she expresses herself. And because of the way she wears her hair when she hugs people, her hair or the hair of the person she's hugging rucks up against the hearing aid and causes all this fuzziness. And it drives her a little bit crazy. I mean, she bears with it because she loves to hug, but it makes her absolutely batty.
I understand that 100%. And I think a few other people here could probably understand that as well. Kathleen, I want to kind of ask the same question of you, only because of the generational difference. You worked with your daughter, who was fitted with hearing aids many years ago. Sophie is by no stretch an older adult, but she received hearing aids many, many years ago. What was your experience like? Did you feel prepared? Did your hearing healthcare provider prepare you to work with a child that was using hearing aids?
Actually, not that. I wasn't really that prepared, to be honest, in terms of, the understanding the technology, and what the pace at which the technology was evolving. I was, much more concentrated on, does she get all the help that she needs? And whether it is, at school particularly. And there, I remember my husband would go every year to her school because we chose to have her essentially going to a mainstream kind of school. And he would have a meeting with all her teachers and say, look, you have to talk to her, make sure she understands, and you have to be facing her. And I guarantee you that within the next 3 weeks, you will forget because she compensate. And indeed, that was always the case. And we had to go back and kind of, hey, remember our first meeting? So it was, we all kind of like worked, discovered as a team almost, and I think that the environment, the school environment, the family environment, and technology really helped because when she first started, particularly at school, she had this FM system where the teachers would wear what do you call it?
Microphone?
A microphone.
Yeah,
Thank you. And then they had to give it to another teacher. They forget. She would hear what's going on when the teacher was gone. I mean, you had the whole, and we also had to make sure that the school was providing an environment, with carpeting or which, was very helpful. But it doesn't compensate for everything. So all that is, work. It was work in progress. And then Sophie developed, the knowledge of reading lips, which I think also helped a great deal. But I think that the real lesson or conclusion, I think, is that Sophie really, was a great advocate for herself. And it's almost as though she took it, and I don't want to put words in you, Sophie, but it took almost like embracing pride in this condition and embracing it and advocating. And I think that that's really a very helpful attitude.
I developed thick skin for sure, but yeah.
Yeah.
I think the technology part was interesting because I went from analog to digital during that period.
Yeah.
That was the transition that I struggled with the most. For a lot of people now, they're only in digital hearing aids, but there was a time, and I think some of the people that are members of HLAA will remember, but there was a time when hearing aids were analog, and it was a very different setup. And so that transition was not fun.
Mm.
I think I was about 10
Yeah.
when that happened, and you don't want to think about that. You want to think about other things. You want to just put these on and just move on with your life. And so that transition was a tough one, and I don't think I was really prepared for that. I don't think anybody was prepared for my reaction on that one.
And to be honest, as you said at the very beginning, each new pair of hearing aids, you really don't like to change. And in fact, I think that you delay as long as you can, the idea of, getting new hearing aids, even though they might, provide you with a lot of help in terms of whatever, technology they give you, right? Mm.
Right. No, I really do delay it. I think that I
Yeah.
have now 8 years old.
Well, she's a creature of habit. What can I say? Yeah.
Another question I have, in terms of communication strategies, and this is a question for everybody, but we'll start with Lindsay. What are some of the communication strategies that you use to improve your ability to communicate with a person that has hearing loss?
I find that I call on the classes I took in college when mom and dad first got diagnosed with tinnitus. So I have sort of reconnected to the idea of using my diaphragm more because it just sort of helps with projection. The other thing that I've begun to do, tried to do more with, especially with my mom, is when we're in a crowded situation, when the restaurant is loud or when we're out on the street, just understand that it helps if I'm closer, if I'm facing her, if I'm talking kind of, if I'm not directly in front of her, talking turned toward her. I also find that it's interesting because now that my mother has sort of her hearing aids have helped her so vastly, now she's talking to my dad about how he needs hearing aids, which is a very interesting conversation to be privy to. I'm not taking sides on that one. They're figuring it out themselves, but my dad it's also talking to my dad about talking to my mom. You know, my father is Southern, and so he tends to trail off on his sentences, which drives my mom crazy. So I also, part of the family strategy is just for me to be present with my dad, to remind my dad to be close to my mom or make sure he ends his sentences on the same volume that he starts with and not talk to her while he's walking out of a room. You know, it's those kind of basic coping or those basic adjustments I think have been really helpful. And the other thing too, that I've noticed, and it's so small, but it's been so helpful, has been kind of supporting my mom as she shares it with other people because she just didn't want to, you know. There was sort of a sense of like secrecy to it. And she hangs out with my friends a lot. And I love my friends, but they don't have a lot of experience at this. And so I didn't want to go around her. So we had this whole conversation about like, if you want to see my friend Rose, who's got four little children who are always being four little children, like you might want to tell her about this so that she understands like how to sort of sit with you and sit closer to you and all this stuff. And so supporting her while she shares it has been really helpful too. Like, which I count as a communication strategy because it helps her be in the world, it helps her be among the people that she loves. So I don't know if that counts, but it counts for us.
It does. It's an anticipatory strategy.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Great word for it. Love that.
You know,
Yeah.
Lindsay, your comments about voice and exercise of voice is very interesting because I know that Sophie, she, was saying that, I can't, your voice is very different from, her dad's voice, obviously. And, sometimes depending on how it comes, it could really be an impediment to really hear well, so I wish I had known about that.
I think honestly, Kathleen, I think we were sort of weirdly predisposed to it since we all grew up in they worked in television and theater and so did I. So it was one of those weird crossover things that it's like a Venn diagram nobody saw coming. Yeah.
And Kathleen, what were some of the strategies that you implemented to improve your ability to communicate with Sophie as a child? You'd mentioned, I think, being face to face.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there
I mean,
anything
that's
you did at home?
right. I mean, that is definitely the most important, and if, that didn't work, being very close to her as well, so to make sure that, the words are coming across because you don't want to be in a situation whereby you say, oh, forget it, that's a no-no. So yeah, it's, you know.
And Sophie, what are some of your strategies, or what are some of your go-to strategies to share, either for yourself or that you share with your patients?
Yeah, I think, I mean, definitely for myself, if you're talking to me from another room, I sometimes will make a purpose of not responding as a lesson, which I don't know if that's a great way to go about it, but it's a sort of if you want to talk to me, come to me and talk to me. Don't talk to me from another room. And I think I've emphasized the importance of that. And I think, that creates this intimacy between family and friends that you're facing someone, you're being present when they're communicating with you. You make it the purpose of communicating with you if you're facing them, and interacting with them in the same space. Um, I think that's definitely one that I harp on often because that's one of the biggest complaints that I hear from patients, and I have it myself, but it's just, oh, when they're in the other room, I can't hear them. And it's like, okay, well, get into the same room. Not that hard. But yeah, I think that's the biggest one. I think as my mom has said, I lip read a lot, so I am always needing to face someone, which is ironic. 'Cause my dad had a beard and still had the beard, and I've learned to lip read around the beard and the mustache very well, which is sort of one of the first things that they audiologists are saying. It's like, oh, shave the beard. Good luck telling my dad that. It's never going to happen. But I think I guess those are the big one. It's really face-to-face communication and speaking slowly and clearly. I think Lindsay touched on this sort of when the voice goes down. I like to kind of call it a radio voice when you're talking like this and then it just trails off. And it's really hard in just any language and in speech. It's really hard to say it at the same level from the beginning to the end of the sentence. But getting into that habit is also really crucial to communication, I think.
Absolutely. It's funny that this happens to a lot of people being a room or two away. It's difficult for many people to hear, and and I have hearing loss in my family too. There's several members with hearing loss, so using communication strategies is something I always think about. But It's usually one way though. And so when I'm 2 rooms away and somebody's talking, I cannot hear. And so I've gotten to the point where sometimes I tell them what I think I heard. And once it was something about feeding the chickens in the backyard, and we don't even have chickens. So Judith, how about you? What are some communication strategies that you use?
Uh, Well, I'm fascinated listening to Lindsay talk about her training because, in essence, I've made use of that as well. I am a classically trained singer. And so, one of the things I was doing before I learned a little bit about hearing loss, I didn't realize that the highs were the first thing to go. And so I was assuming that high would penetrate better. So I was pitching my voice higher and higher to be heard. And then I learned that I should not be doing that. So, but now I'm very conscious of supporting the sound because the minute you take air in and support the sound, it's not necessarily louder, but it's stronger. And you'll be heard better. And so I do try to consciously do that. But I am the most guilty of speaking from the other room. I have always done that, and I try not to do it. And the other thing I do, which when we heard about these microphones that somebody can wear around their neck, the first thing my husband said was, well, you're going to have to stop talking to yourself. And because I do. And, in general, he can distinguish between when I'm talking to him and when I'm talking to myself. But we can't try that microphone until I can stop doing that. So those are the communication strategies that I try to do. The biggest concern that I try to do and help, part of it is I really believe that a lot of these strategies are for him to do. This is his communication to make when we're in a restaurant or something. Frequently, our friends, we try to position it so he is across from our guests. But they will turn and talk to me. And I will say, I can hear you. Talk to him so that he can pick it up. And like Sophie's teachers, they will forget. And there I am trying to model good behavior. And it's hard. But it's a comfort factor for him. And I don't want to be the one doing that because, it's one thing for Kathleen to do it when Sophie is 5. I don't want to appear to be Jim's nanny. He has to take possession of this and do it. And he's getting more comfortable with it, I hope, because it makes a big difference.
Sure. I think, Judith, advocacy is incredibly important. And it's something that I think Sophie, as her mom pointed out, as Kathleen pointed out, it's something that she embraced early on. And certainly your advocacy to better communicate with others and letting people know, one, that you have hearing loss, and then how explaining to others how they can best communicate with you.
Yeah. And it's I mean, I don't know how Sophie felt about it, but it's not so much championing the hearing loss. It's gaming the system. It's winning out over the pitfalls. It's achieving it. It's getting the app to work, sort of thing. It's I bested the technology kind of thing.
It's a learning curve. It's an awkward, stumbling learning curve, and it just takes persistent, patient, and time, which none of us embrace, if we're going to be
No,
honest. Those are the hardest things to embrace.
yeah,
And just yeah, it's awkward. It's weird.
it
It's like
is. It
you're
is.
functioning
And
like a
Jim does
robot. You're
not
like,
like
come on.
technology.
Sophie, this is Karen. Fumbling and stumbling, it's the caregivers that fumble and stumble too. There's so much, there's trial and error in so many things. Even as an audiologist with hearing loss, I fit my mom with hearing aids. When she had a cold, I remember pulling out the whiteboard, and then breaking down words to like segments that she could understand clearly and then as a result pronounce clearly. So yeah, I think we all fumble and stumble together, just in different ways. But yeah, hopefully in the end to be successful in communicating and successful in supporting. Absolutely.
And one of the stumbles was also, to make sure that we have enough batteries. That was in the days when, you did have the hearing aids were working on batteries, and, time and again, right, Sophie? I mean, we would say, whoa, where
I mean,
can we get
I'm
it?
still battling that. I mean, the number of times I'm walking out without a battery and I'm just like, okay. And you would think as an audiologist and 30 years of wearing hearing aids that I would get this sorted out, but I have yet to get this sorted out. Still
Yeah.
stumbling and fumbling my way through batteries.
You won't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And Sophie, we're stumbling and fumbling with the hearing aid batteries, but making sure our phone is charged and the remote microphone is charged too. It's about 5 after 7, 6 after 7. Sophie, I don't know if there are any questions that you wanted to bring to the group that I haven't already brought to the group, or any other topics that you feel we should dive into a little deeper.
I think maybe at this time, if any of the panelists have anything extra they want to say or share, if not, we can open it to some questions that people might have or comments that people might have for our panelists and kind of go from there.
Kathleen, anything that you wanted to add?
I just want to add a cute anecdote, and that is that, when Sophie couldn't stand whomever it was talking to her or whatever constantly, she was very subtly turning off her hearing aids, and say, okay, that was it. And we did tease her with that, but it was quite cute.
And not so appropriate now as an adult.
I don't know, Sophie. My mom does that still.
I respect that.
Judith or Patricia and John, anything?
Anything?
No, move on.
I think we're good.
Okay, can we open up to questions?
I have actually a question, and that is, with, we are all getting older, and I wonder to what extent you, Karen, as an audiologist, you feel that the acceptance of hearing aid is increasing, or is there still very much this reluctance from your patients to really be aided? Because I see around me in the street and so on, many people, are, kind of still are wearing hearing aids now.
Yes, this is Karen. I think we see a lot of people accepting their hearing loss. A lot of people, because of support from family, friends, and organizations like the Hearing Loss Association of America, where they find additional support and learn many more things than they could have learned at other places. But I do find that there are still some people that aren't ready to accept their hearing loss. They're very early on, or maybe farther along on their hearing loss journey, but just not willing to embrace their hearing loss yet. So I think we see more people adopting hearing aids, but I do find that there are plenty of people who aren't there yet.
Don't you think that there is some portion of people who are not stymied just by perhaps the onus of having hearing loss, but by the extreme cost of hearing aids?
This is Karen. Absolutely. The cost of hearing healthcare is exorbitant. It is a challenge. It really is a challenge to find funding for hearing instruments. Sophie, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard because there's this battle between the cost of the hearing aids, there's this people who are not ready, but then there's also this factor of cognitive decline and what we're seeing, especially during COVID with social isolation, we've seen
Mhm.
how that had a huge impact in our hearing health and our social interactions and our cognition. And so I think there's just a lot of factors that kind of can create this overwhelming sensation when it comes to making the decision of getting hearing aids and of going down that path of hearing aids, especially when they're so expensive. And so it's
Yeah.
just and all the more reasons why it's really helpful to have people in our corners to sort of guide us through these decisions because it's not easy. But it's definitely complex and so the technology is always it's rapidly improving, but not everyone wants to embrace all of the fancy features and technology. I think they just want something that helps them hear well and enjoy the environment.
Are there any other questions? I'm going to open up the chat and see.
I think Gail and Georgia both have their hand raised,
Oh,
so
thank
maybe
you,
we can
Sophie.
start with Gail.
Okay. You got ready for my question? Okay. Anyhow, basically this said, it was interesting, talking, Sophie's mother basically accepting the fact that she had the hearing loss. So the one topic that I think that we didn't, focus on and, that much was situations where the parents don't accept it. And that was my situation. I lost I had my hearing loss that developed when I was 6 years old. And like, that my mother didn't want to deal with it. And I didn't get hearing aids until I was 12. It was really kind of just attempting to cure it, and get doctor to doctor to cure it. And so I was just wondering what you have to say about, when your parents or other family members will not accept it, will not acknowledge and accept your hearing loss.
Sophie, do you want to take that first?
Sure. I think that is a sort of not uncommon. I think we do see it often where parents are struggling to accept the diagnosis of their child with hearing loss and struggling to accept, this label that their child has a hearing loss or is quote, hearing impaired or deaf or any of those labels that get placed on them. I think, one of the things is it requires more counseling. It requires a lot more meetings. It requires a lot more patience of working with the parent and understanding that their child is going to be missing out on a lot. And, we want them to achieve the goal that they want to achieve for their child. And the way to do that is really working with them on coming to a term and understanding of what their child is missing out on. I think, I think there's been a lot more research on how the counseling and the tools that we use to counsel parents and families in these situations, because what you're describing, we've seen it. It's not uncommon.
And this is Karen. When I consult in a birth to five preschool and EI setting, I see it also. Not incredibly often. More often than not, parents are able to embrace their child's hearing loss, and like Sophie's mom, Kathleen, are advocates and staunch supporters of them using their devices and getting in the educational setting. But as Sophie pointed out, we do a lot of education, and in a preschool and EI setting, we have a lot of time to work with the parents. So we've been rather successful with getting them on board in terms of allowing their child to use hearing aids consistently and cochlear implants consistently.
I also want to point out that hearing detection of hearing loss is happening at a newborn stage now. It's not happening at the school age stage anymore. We're capturing it earlier and almost right like day 2 or sometimes, 1 month into the child's life. And so it allows us to really get in there at a time that's crucial that I don't think had been the case in the past, at least with me or you, where it was much later in life. And so getting in sooner and earlier it just allows us to really dig in on the counseling and guiding the family.
And this is Karen. We also have data logging with cochlear implants and hearing aids. So when the child gets to the physician's office, the physician's able to see how many hours a day the child's wearing the device. And that's another opportunity for supporting the family and educating the family on using hearing devices, hearing aids, cochlear implants more consistently. So we see it from that end too, and it's very helpful for us.
Georgia, do you have a question? Hold on, I think you mute. Georgia, you're on mute. Something is wrong with your screen. Do you want to type it into the chat? Okay. Okay. Um, we'll go to Ellen, and if you want to chat it into the chat, write it into the chat. Go ahead. Ellen, you had a question?
I don't know that it's a question, but I wanted to mention that early on in my hearing loss journey, I went to an audiologist who said to me when I said, I can't tell the difference between the F, like Frank, and S, like Sam. And he said, oh, you're hearing something. It's better than nothing. I later learned that this was not appropriate for an audiologist to say, but when you knew it, you don't know enough. So that was something that is worth being aware of if you feel that you don't have the right relationship with an audiologist, that you need to find someone else.
I couldn't agree more, Ellen. Sophie, do you see anybody else with their hand up or anybody that would like to make a comment?
No, I don't. I don't see anybody else that. Catherine, you had a comment?
I will. Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting about this discussion is that in every case but yours, Sophie, the hearing loss is developed as a grown up. And so maybe both of you could talk a little bit about what it's like when a parent comes into see you with a child that they're now accepting has hearing loss and ready to do something about it. How much reluctance do you see? How do you get around it?
Sorry, can you repeat that question? My computer froze for a moment.
Okay, so what I was saying is that Sophie, your mother has talked a lot about what it was like with you as a child. Can you hear me now? Okay. And it's fascinating. And I'm just wondering what both of you, audiologists, feel when when a parent with a child who needs hearing aids comes in and is still resistant and reluctant. The parent is resistant and reluctant, not the child. How do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a couple of factors that you need to take in. Are there any cultural factors that are playing into this? Whether there's any cultures that that have really strong stigmas when it comes to a child having hearing loss, and then once you sort of figure out that factor, I think it really just requires. I think a lot of why parents might be resistant is the lack of understanding and education of what it means for the child to have a hearing loss. And so I think it requires, going through that hearing test result with them. It requires, we have hearing loss stimulators in the office. So you can see this is what it sounds like for your child right now. And, doing some certain testing. So testing the child in a situation of, words and sentences, and then showing these scores, and then showing how they do with hearing aids, and seeing if those scores improve. And really, I think it's just sort of leading by example of concrete objective scores and concrete objective measures can kind of go a long way when it comes to helping a parent that might be resisting to putting hearing aids on a child. And then the other thing is culturally, there are some parents that are maybe deaf and are leaning toward the deaf community with a capital D. And so you have to be really conscious of that, that they want their child to be raised in that situation. And so not hearing aids are not necessarily a fit for everyone, but for majority of the parents that want their kid to be speaking orally and going to a mainstream school, those are the techniques that we would use. It just requires much more in-depth counseling and education and understanding on what the resistance is. Why are they resisting? Where are they on this, I guess, like 5 stages of grief when it comes to learning about their child's hearing loss and navigating those 5 stages? Are they in the anger stage? Are they in the denial stage? Where are they on that grief scale? And turning your counseling session to address it. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I think especially when you're um, talking to people from cultures where deafness and hearing loss are regarded with suspicion. And we have a lot of people in New York City who have come from elsewhere. So anyway, Karen, what's your feeling about that? How do you approach the reluctant parent?
I find that testing with the parent, involving the parent in the testing process, so that the child will sit on their lap and I'll introduce sounds into the booth, and the parent then can see for themselves what the child is hearing versus what they aren't hearing. And sometimes that's very eye-opening. Either for a permanent hearing loss that we've identified, or even for a temporary hearing loss, maybe due to fluid, an ear infection or something to that effect. So I find involving the parents in testing is incredibly helpful.
Tony, you had a question?
Yes. Before I ask my very hard question, I want to thank you, Sophie, for putting this together this evening, and for all the panelists. Karen, thanks for your great questions. This is just, I wish I could have heard this when I first got my hearing aids and I was really struggling. I think it would have been very encouraging to me just to know that other people have the same issues that I had. My very hard question is, I want to go back to something that Judith said. And I'm always trying to figure this out in terms of how to help people to be more forthcoming and to manage their hearing loss in a better way. And you talked about trying to get your husband to deal with some of these issues on his own and to be more of a self-advocate for himself. And you said, quote, I wrote it down because I really liked it. You said it's kind of like gaming the system. It's winning out over pitfalls. And there were a couple of times in my life where, I mean, and it took me forever to get over the stigma of hearing loss, but there were a couple of incidents that happened that sort of, I said, helped me to cross the line, where I went from being ashamed and unable to deal with my hearing loss to saying, wow, maybe I'm okay because maybe I'm in a pretty powerful position because I've been able to deal with this really hard issue and overcome some of those pitfalls. So, my very hard question, I'd be really interested to know if any of the panelists have any thoughts or insights for themselves as companions or support systems, or for the people with hearing loss, of how to help, how to get over some of those pitfalls, how to help someone to get over it, or as someone with hearing loss, how you manage to kind of get over some of those pitfalls and to find the strength to do that. I don't even know if that question makes sense, but I would love it if someone could give me some answers about that.
Well, if you are going from my statement, I'll talk about it a little bit, but I think I might have been speaking with some more mundane issues than you were grappling with. When I talked about letting my husband deal with talking to friends in restaurants, etc., I think I meant it as a gesture of respect to him, that I'm not taking over what is part of his life. I don't want to speak for him when he's perfectly capable of speaking for himself. There's a tendency, I feel, and I think this happens, for instance, when someone is a patient in the hospital, and I notice this also if someone has hearing loss, that an outside person will speak to the caregiver, not the person with hearing loss, and they're perfectly capable of speaking for themselves. And so I do what I can to make sure that he speaks for himself. So to me, it's a gesture of respect.
So I understand.
Yeah. So
I understand that, but I think doing that for your husband, to me, the message would be, you're still capable of doing this.
Yes,
it's more
absolutely.
difficult now. It's a big pain in the neck. But, you can do it. And I always tell people say, oh, when I go to the hospital, they have to allow me to bring someone to, help me to communicate. And I said, of course, but at the same time, you really need to learn how to do this yourself, because you may not always have that person. But I think those are just ways to reinforce that. Yeah, you've lost your hearing, but you still have strength. And
well, fortunately, he has, as I understand it, a moderate hearing loss. So he hasn't completely lost his hearing. But where I do a lot, is I'm sort of tech support. I'm kind of a geek. I like the technical stuff. He does not. Like Patricia said, she does that stuff. I do that stuff. And he does cede that to me. Where he takes it from me is when it's something he has to do, like changing from one program to another. That I might offer to do it, and he'll, let me do that, because he knows he has to do it in order to get the things running, and we sort of work that out.
Right.
But when it's setting things up and all of that, there I do help, and because it comes easily to me. And why should he's having a frustrating enough time just dealing with the things in his ears. Why not let me set the tech stuff up? So I don't know, did that answer your question?
I would like somebody to help me with that too, because I hate it. But I do really like what you said about getting someone to speak up for themselves. I think that's a great message. No, you can still do that. I can help you with your tech.
Yeah, he doesn't need goosing to do it. I just need to remember to back off. I see it as something I should do.
Well, thank you for being that supportive person, and that encouraging person, because we really need that.
This is Karen. And yes, thank you, Judith, for being that person, encouraging and supportive. And Tony also, because you're also encouraging and supportive as well. So thank you. And I want to thank everybody in the group for joining us today, especially our panelists. The information and the insight you shared is so greatly appreciated. And I want to thank Sophie Racine for being an amazing audiologist and member of the chapter and board member and supporting this chapter as much as you do. And Catherine, thank you so much for everything that you do as well.
I want to thank everybody. This is really a fascinating and very honest conversation. And that's a hard thing to get on Zoom, but I think you, Karen and Sophie have just accomplished it. So thank you, and thank you to the speakers who agreed to talk about what are really pretty personal issues. It's great. I just want to tell you when our next meeting is. It is October 21st, which is the third Tuesday. And the topic is assistive devices. So it's, things you use to supplement your hearing aids or your cochlear implant. Tina Childress, who has spoken to our chapter before, is the presenter for that one. And I hope everybody is able to come. And I want to thank everybody for coming to this meeting too. And we're off to a great start in this new year in terms of Hearing Loss Association. Anybody else want to say anything?
I just want to thank everyone for being here, and I just want to thank the panelists so much for opening up and sharing your experiences. It was really a delight to hear everybody. No pun intended.
Okay, I guess we should say goodbye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us. This has been really wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. I look forward to watching the recording. Okay, I'm going to sign off. Bye.